Many elected Republicans are visibly panicking in the face of widespread public backlash after Donald Trump granted sweeping and wildly unpopular pardons to January 6 insurrectionists, including those who attacked the cops. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. As you know, in one of his first official acts as president, Donald Trump gave sweeping pardons to basically every January 6th defendant. There was between 1,500 and 1,600, and with the exception of 14, Donald Trump gave pardons to all of them. Those who pled guilty, those who were convicted, those who were still awaiting, trial and sentencing and things of that nature. And then the 14 whose sentences he didn't pardon, or rather whom he didn't pardon, he commuted their sentences. So the people like Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Tarrio, people who engaged and were convicted of seditious conspiracy, all right? Pardons and commutations. Whatever you think about January 6th, and I happen to believe it was a violent insurrection fomented by the then sitting president, you need to understand poll after poll after poll, years later, despite aggressive efforts by right-wing media and MAGA to change the narrative, pardoning January 6 defendants is wildly unpopular. Only 20% of Americans support Trump pardoning January 6 rioters. That is how despicable that particular day was, that despite all the powers of right-wing media, they still have been unable to persuade even half the country that these people should be pardoned. And the backlash is mounting. So it was reported within the past 24 hours that the biggest police union that backed Trump in the election is now publicly blasting him for what he did. So, Axios is reporting, Donald Trump's near-total pardon of January 6 rioters was denounced by the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union in the United States, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police on Tuesday. They said that they are wildly upset with Donald Trump pardoning people who attacked the police, okay? So again, there's backlash not just from liberals and progressives, but also from people who are nominally conservative and who nominally are supposed to be supported by Republicans. Now, the Republican Party, the elected officials, they're kind of left holding the bag. I don't have much sympathy for them because they knowingly backed Donald Trump, and Trump campaigned on pardoning these people. But so many of them took the position that there would either be no pardons or that there would be targeted pardons, not this sweeping pardon that Donald Trump gave. So we're going to play several clips of elected Republicans being confronted with questions about Donald Trump's decision and unpack it all together.
Well, I've said what I said before, and that is we're not looking backwards, we're looking forward.
I do not support the pardons if they were given to people who committed violent crimes.
I've got concerns with any pardons for people who did harm to a police officer, full stop. And I've also got serious concerns with all of the pardons by President Biden.
I'm uncomfortable with all of it. That said, I'm willing to look forward instead of backwards, and I do think that that's what this episode does.
So, again, we got more where that came from, but you saw a variety of responses. You have John Thune, who took Mitch McConnell's place as the Senate Majority Leader. He's, very stoic. Oh, we're not looking backward, we're looking forward. They're full of shit, by the way, at least their counterparts in the House are. But again, a non-answer because he knows better. Susan Collins, who is a Republican senator in blue Maine, she has to walk a tightrope. She says she doesn't support it. You have Tom Tillis, who is, we're going to play another clip of him, who is my senator in North Carolina. It was hilarious, during the confirmation hearing of Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi, he expressed incredulity. He's like, of course you all wouldn't pardon the violent people who attacked cops. And that's precisely what Donald Trump did. So this guy has egg on his face. He has been humiliated. So he doubles it. He's like, oh, yeah, I don't support that. But also, I don't support President Biden's, pardons either. And then, of course, you have Kramer here. And again, he can't even meet these people in the eye. He's like looking down, stuttering. I really think that we should look forward and not backward. So pathetic, watching these people visibly panic in real time. I want to play an extended clip of Tom Tillis, who is seen as a moderate. He's representing, again, North Carolina, a purple state. So he is, at least on paper, one of the more vulnerable Republican senators. And so he is confronted on this.
Just get your thoughts on the pardons from President Trump regarding.
Yeah, I've got any of we're going through it now. Many of them probably was the right thing to do. They made a bad choice, but anybody who was convicted of assault on a police officer, I can't get there at all. I think it was a bad idea.
Are you worried that in terms of
by the way, we can't have a story about pardons without talking about the nonsense that Biden did on his way out the door.
well, I was going to
So you see what he did there. So again, he gave an unambiguous statement. Obviously, he's uncomfortable about confronting Trump, but then he feels like he has to couch it. Well, Joe Biden gave pardons, to people who were not convicted of or charged with violent attacks. He gave pardons, which are wildly controversial, which have been criticized by members of his own party, but on the belief that they would be targeted by Donald Trump, given that Trump campaigned on political retribution. So I'm sorry, this is an apples and oranges comparison. What the January 6th defendants were charged with, convicted of, and pled guilty to often is objectively infinitely worse than anything that you can throw a Biden's family or the members of the House January 6th Select Committee. So it's just pretty pathetic to see Tillis here try to create a false equivalence. But there are others as well. 2 more Republican senators criticized Trump pardoning January 6th rioters. Oh, actually, before I get to that, I should also say, just to go back to Tillis there for a minute, he says, I just can't get there people who assaulted, police officers. I want to say 600 January 6th defendants were charged with attacking the police, with engaging in assault or obstructing the police. 600. 172, I believe, pled guilty to attacking the police. 69 pled guilty to attacking police with a deadly weapon. So we're talking about hundreds of people who either pled guilty, were convicted, or were at least charged with assaulting the police. Hundreds. Imagine what Tom Tillis and these people would say if it had been President Biden. But again, note the shame. Tom Tillis has a hard time meeting the press's eyes because he knows this is a reflection and an indictment of his party and his party's leader. But here's some others as well. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, I believe. Quote, I'm a big back the blue guy. I think people who assault police officers, if they do the crime, they should do the time. But again, won't condemn what Trump did, just say he disagrees with it. Lisa Murkowski, possibly the least partisan Republican in the Republican Senate. This is what she had to say. Quote, I don't think that the approach of a blanket pardon that includes those who cause harm, physical harm to our police officers, to others that resulted in violence, I'm disappointed to see that. And I do fear the message that's being sent to these great men and women who stood by us. Indeed, Lisa, indeed. Mitch McConnell, not going to give him plaudits for this, but Semaphore reported that Mitch McConnell disagreed. As jubilant as Republican lawmakers are over Donald Trump's second term, they're facing a familiar story. Donald Trump is back to picking fights with them and trying to bend them to his will. So in terms of objection to the January 6th pardons, quote, well, I think I agree with the vice president, Senator Mitch McConnell told Semaphore, referring to J.D. Vance's recent remarks that violent Capitol riot offenders shouldn't be pardoned. Quote, no one should excuse violence, and particularly violence against police officers. Again, won't come out and condemn Trump explicitly, but says, oh, I'm with the vice president. Well, the vice president was ignored. He was given the finger by Donald Trump, his boss. You all were humiliated in that respect, just totally running roughshod over you. We also have CNN confronting a House Republican congresswoman on this issue. And again, to the extent that I can give any of them credit, which is very little, she condemns the pardons.
Congressman, I do want to pivot to ask about Trump's pardons for January 6th rioters. About 4 years ago, after being moved to a secure location by Capitol Police, you tweeted in part, quote, everyone who is responsible for this violence and lawlessness must stop. This is absolutely unacceptable and un-American. Do you think President Trump did the right thing by pardoning rioters who assaulted police officers?
Well, I do have an issue with those who assaulted police officers, and I think that those do need to serve the time. That is unacceptable. I've always sided with our police officers in saying that any assault or cop killers should never, the cop killers should never be released. In fact, I very much disagree with what President Biden has done with actually commuting the sentences of multiple cop killers.
So again, pivoting to President Biden, because you can't just have an unambiguous condemnation of what Donald Trump did. You all are supposed to be the party of back the blue, the party of personal accountability, the party of conservatism, and yet Donald Trump betrays it on a regular basis. So again, I want you to understand here, there is no genuinely brave sitting elected Republican senator or congressperson, even the few times that they dare speak out against what Donald Trump has to say. You can see that they are nervous, they are visibly nervous, and they do everything in their power to create a false equivalence. Now, if you want to see nervousness and cowardice on full display, look no further than Marco Rubio, current Secretary of State, until quite recently, former Republican senator from Florida. He was confronted about this on the news, and his answer betrays, again, the visible nervousness and patheticness which animates the modern-day GOP.
I hear you, but in February 2021, even you issued a statement and you said the images of the attack stirred up anger in you. The nation was embarrassed in the eyes of the world by our own citizens. How do you personally reconcile those feelings with the pardons that he did yesterday? I understand you have work to do in the job as hard. There are many things, but on this particular issue, I'm curious about what you're thinking.
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking is that I used to be a United States Senator until midnight last night, and now I'm about to be sworn in as the Secretary of State of the United States. And that's what I'm thinking, is I work for Donald J. Trump, the new President of the United States, the 47th President, who has a clear mandate to reorient our foreign policy.
So pathetic. Again, won't answer the question. Very opinionated, and would be very opinionated, Secretary of State or otherwise, if there was a role reversal and this had been done under President Biden. But unfortunately, he can't find his backbone. I mean, this is truly pathetic stuff. And I guess I'll leave you with this. Again, a lot of Republicans visibly panicking, even as they try often to support or at least give cover to what Trump did. The few who will criticize it also panicking. But somebody who is also pretty pathetic in this regard is Republican Speaker Mike Johnson. I want to end on this clip right here. Mike Johnson was asked about this earlier today at a press conference.
I've long said you guys back the blue. How do you justifiably say that when Trump just pardoned a bunch of violent January 6 rioters who attacked Capitol Police? And if those rioters come to the Capitol, will you welcome them back here?
So look, everybody can describe this however they want. The president has the pardon and commutation authority. It's his decision, and I think what was made clear all along is that peaceful protests and people who engage in that should never be punished. There was a weaponization of the Justice Department. There was a
So again, see, I mean, he's peaceful protesters weren't punished. Now, if they trespassed, if they broke the law, but weren't violent, yes, there were still charges brought against them, at least not all of them, but at least some of them. But watching Mike Johnson here again suggests that really January 6th was a peaceful protest. He's full of shit. And the last thing I'll say is he says, well, it's within the president's power to pardon. That's true. Democrat or Republican, they can pardon whoever they want. People who have been charged with or convicted of a federal crime, or I suppose they can try to preemptively pardon. But you would never adopt that posture if President Biden pardoned anybody. You would then scrutinize it and question it, even though President Biden's pardon authority is equal to Donald Trump's pardon authority. As a matter of fact, after Mike Johnson said this, he was then asked about President Biden's pardons of the House January 6th Select Committee and their staff and his family. And Mike Johnson said, we'll be looking into it. So when it comes to President Biden's pardons, no, we got to look back and we got to look into it. When it comes to Donald Trump's pardons, no, we can't look at this because it's perfectly within Donald Trump's or the president's purview. The hypocrisy is staggering. Their shamelessness is their superpower. But even Mike Johnson, you can tell, is uncomfortable at the question, which might explain, again, the public backlash and the fact that the biggest police union in the country who backed Trump is condemning what Trump did. These losers are pathetic, and they should be relentlessly mocked for the rest of their political careers. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.